Hi everyone, welcome to our guide on Clinkz the Bone Fletcher. We are PhysicsMathMan and LuminousInverse, and in this guide, we'll talk about Clinkz's skill build, playstyle, and his item choices. Equipped with a combination of moves which grant invisibility, mobility, and attack speed, Clinkz is the ambushing specialist, easily soloing even the tankiest of heroes. A well-played Clinkz can begin to dish out insane amounts of burst damage, leading to 1 or 2 hit gank KOs, and can push towers like it's his job. So let's go ahead and discuss his skill set. Strafe, his first move, grants a gigantic attack speed increase, which allows Clinkz to unleash a rapid barrage of arrows for a short period of time. This move is what lets Clinkz quickly disintegrate an unsuspecting hero. Because of the long cooldown, you're probably only going to be able to use this ability once per fight, but you can rip through multiple targets pretty quickly with it. His second move, Searing Arrows, is a simple auto attack buff, which adds a separate instance of bonus damage. Two things to note are that Searing Arrows is not a unique attack modifier, and therefore stacks with items like Desolator or Scotty, and that because it is applied separately from the auto attack, debuffs like Enfeeble or Static Link will not take effect on it. Lastly, if you crit or lifesteal off of your attack, the Searing Arrow bonus part will not be applied. Long story short, Searing Arrows is what makes Clinkz hit hard. On the other hand, his third move, Skeleton Walk, is what makes Clinkz a ganking terror. Upon cast, he quickly fades into an invisible form and is granted a move speed bonus and phase. By the last level of Skeleton Walk, he moves at nearly max movement speed with only boots equipped, which is pretty handy since Clinkz spends most of the game running around the map. Note that you can do any action during the half-second fade time without breaking the invisibility. And I know you've been watching our other videos, so you better be tread swapping from into Agi whenever you do this. Finally, his ultimate, Death Pact, is a sacrificing ability which takes a non-hero unit's life in return for a temporary % health and attack damage increase. I cannot stress how subtle yet impactful this ability is, as it momentarily turns Clinkz into an explosive armored machine gun. Most of the time Clinkz is frail and depends on positioning. However, a Death Pact on a large neutral can make you one of the hardest hitting and yet tankiest heroes at several specific points in the game. The most potent sequence of skills on Clinkz should go as follows. Find a very large neutral creep such as a Centaur or a Hellbear and use Death Pact. Immediately go into Skeleton Walk and either beeline towards an enemy or attempt to find one if they're not on the map. Making sure that Searing Arrows is on autocast, break your invisibility while simultaneously using Strafe. It is important to position yourself beforehand correctly so that you hit as many arrows on the opponent as possible, and don't forget to use any active items such as an Orchid appropriately. Clinkz can be played in just about any lane, and his ability progression is practically the same for each situation. Searing Arrows is the first skill to maximize because it offers an extremely effective last hitting mechanism, and due to orb walking, which we will touch upon in a bit, makes Clinkz a terror in the lane. In most cases, Skeleton Walk at level 2 for survivability and a value point in Strafe at level 4 is the way to go because both spells offer a large part of their utility with just one level. Commonly, Skeleton Walk is maximized second as it lets you move at nearly maximum speed at level 4, and usually you can finish off an enemy in the mid-game with only one level of Strafe. However, it is possible that spreading the skill points between Strafe and Skeleton Walk is the better choice to go. Consider doing this if you have a team that has heavy disables and will benefit from you having Strafe off cooldown more often. Clinkz is completely dependent on items, so it's very important for him to have a strong laning phase. Fortunately, his long range and extra damage from the Searing Arrows allows this to happen in virtually any matchup. The only thing you have to get good at is dealing with his garbage attack animation. Even in the off lane, as long as you're not facing against a strong disabled tri-lane, you can out-harass most supports and obtain a large amount of last hits. One of the best aspects of Searing Arrows is that you can orb walk with it. If you're not familiar with this term, it basically means that Clinkz can volley auto attacks at the enemy hero and not take aggro from the enemy creep wave. In fact, if your opponent in lane is a melee hero, he should never be able to approach the creep wave without eating several auto attacks from you. Before hitting level 6, your mana pool is small and needs to be spent on searing arrows and a possible skeletal walk to escape a dangerous situation. Also, remember that searing arrows applies damage to towers, so whenever possible, whittle away at it. This is especially effective after you've hit level 6, have death pacted a large creep, and have unleashed your strafe on a tower. Once Clinkz obtains his first big item, he has entered the mid-game and has become a hybrid ganker carry hero. Backstabbing supports or low health carries by himself is very easy if he has the Death Pact buff active. Tier 1 towers have no backdoor protection, so if you notice that the glyph has already been used, you can easily scurry over to it and finish it off from even 3/4 health. Removing outer towers is very important to Clinkz, since it opens access to the enemy side of the map. And as you guessed, this extra space will allow you to do enemy territory ganks, and will even open up opportunities for you to push the tier 2 towers. And this is a huge annoyance in general for the opponent team. I must warn you though that you have to be extremely mindful when initiating with Skeletal Walk, since it's a long 20-second cooldown, and you can often get caught out without an escape plan. Get into the practice of using its long duration and only popping out of invisibility when the next Skeletal Walk is ready to go. This applies to Strafe and Death Pact as well, so keep an eye out on the various cooldowns. As you would probably suspect, at this stage of the game, the enemy team will start getting a wide range of detection items for you, so be very careful when walking up fogged ramps or running through a crowd of enemies. Depending on the items Clinkz has gone for, his mid-late to late game will either play more like a utility ganker or a full-fledged damage dealer. Either way, your approach to the fights will be exactly the same. Even with Death Pact and defensive items like PKB, you don't want to be the one to go face to face with the other right-click carries. It's often better to enter the fight from a different angle and at a slightly delayed time, as the enemy will generally be less prepared or have blown their Clinkz catching spells on other heroes. Positioning an isolated focus is key at this point, because you are a glass cannon. Properly done, you will have enough damage to mow through the entire team if you barrage them at the right time. Things to be aware of are enemy blade mails and ghost scepters, as they will severely stunt your strafe timing window. Finally, always keep in the back of your head, after about 2 big items, you can usually solo Roshan. Clinkz has 2 major concerns during the mid-game, mana and damage. His entire skill set is mana intensive, and he'll often need at least 2 mana items to be able to roam around the map constantly. And of course, he is a glass cannon after all, so damage and perhaps a single survivability item is what Clinkz needs in the end. Let's check out 2 games of how we itemized our own Clinkz. My starting items are a set of tangos, ring of protection, and a circlet. With searing arrows, I pretty much get absolute free farm in my lane, so I finish the basics: treads, Aquila, and soul ring. Combined with tread swapping, the other 2 are the basis of my mana regen throughout the entire mid game. At this point, I begin roaming into the enemy jungle and picking up some important kills, or assisting my teammates in fights and pushes. I make sure that I am never the first one to open up the fight, but instead, I play the surprise backstabber. In this game, my mid-game item was a Desolator, since it's one of the highest mid-game damage items, and in my opinion, is OP due to the recent UAM changes. This of course complemented well with my team's silences and disables. With Deso followed up by crits, I was dealing out so much damage that no one could tank me for more than a couple of seconds. After a super strong game, I finished a luxury scythe for some extra disable and pushed for a 32-minute GG. For the second game, Lumi started with tangos and a Wraithband, and then realized that PA would also farm safe lane with him. Because of this, he took one for the team and decided to go and roam. This is a good game to show the more ganking style of Clinkz, especially if you tank Clinkz to the off lane. Mostly going from rune to lane, Lumi backstabs the mid and off lane repeatedly. Since he's going to be roaming all the time anyways, he opted for bottle over soul ring as the mana regen item. Even with just Aquila and treads, Clinkz is able to dish out a ton of damage, and anything that can get backstabbed gets backstabbed. For his first major item, Lumi decides to go Blink Dagger, since his entire job this game is to create space for the PA and Tinker. He basically lived in the enemy jungle and continued to gank heroes and push towers. He ended up getting a Desolator for damage later on, which helped quite a bit during the high ground pushes. The enemy team got choked in their base, and eventually PA and Tinker got too big for them to handle, and they got outcarried. A major item Clinkz often buys is Orchid, which is a strong contender if the team needs a way to deal with escape-prone heroes like Storm or Puck. Orchid also doubles as a great mana regeneration item and offers some extra attack speed. All solid things for Clinkz. However, if there isn't a need for an Orchid, buy Deso for its mid-game domination of towers and Roshan. In general, the situational items for Clinkz are chosen for two reasons: to let him burst an opponent down quickly, or to let him sustain in a fight, whether that be more mana or magic immunity, for example. Don't tell me, you've forgotten everything? Well, no worries, because here are the three main takeaways of playing a killer Clinkz. Number 1, be a menace in lane. With Searing Arrows, you have one of the highest damaging and longest range auto attacks in the game. Or block and don't let them get close. Number 2, Dark Pact, Skelly Walk, then strafe them down during the buff window. You will be shocked at your damage and health, especially in the early to mid game. And number 3, don't initiate fights if you can. Instead, lurk around until the fight has begun and the enemy disables have been thrown. When you see that, pop out screaming,
"You want to fuck with me? Say hello to my little friend."
Clinkz is not only a terror in lane, but can turn into one of the highest DPS heroes available on the entire Dota roster. Equipped with the skills taught in this video, make your enemies decide whether to run or curse the road. My Relax Your Fine comrades, PhysicsMathMan here. Do me a favor and share this channel with your friends so they can increase their Dota skills every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Hope to see you next time.